We now have our last panel, so...
Hi everyone. Imagine this. Imagine that you're the corporate communications director of an airline company and you just lost a plane, like maybe half an hour ago. As a corporate comms director, one of the first things you need to think about is how to relay the relevant information through a relevant spokesperson on the relevant channels. Now 10 to 15 years ago, 10 years ago, this was simple. You probably think about your typical media conference, your first press statement. Now it's very different, right? We've heard from all of them, social media is very, very important. You need to think about that relative over there who is frantic, okay? He is calling up people, he is watching TV, he is looking through Twitter to see what are the information that you are pushing out. You need to think about that reporter over there who is going to that media conference, and on his way there, he's learning about the company through social media as well. So in the first presentation, we heard that the source is more important than the channel, right? And a lot of times, as a corporate comms director, you need to think about how to prepare that source, your online spokesperson. And this is something that we have not really explored in current literature. So over the next 5 to 10 minutes, my team and I would like to share with you our research journey to answer these very questions. I know it's just before lunch, but stay with me because we will deliver to you two things. I promise to deliver to you two things. The first one is to give you a tool to think about how you can create social media training for your online spokesperson, be it your CEO or any other person, and as well as to prepare the team that is supporting him or her, all right? And the second one that I will deliver to you is a cheat sheet, right? We all like cheat sheets. And when you're doing your media training, you might need to think about what are the tasks or activities that is relevant to the social media team during a crisis. Now, I just wish that when we were doing our literature review, we had the studies that were shared with us prior to this. Spokesperson literature informs us that the default spokesperson, is the CEO. But you can have multiple voices or faces for your organization so long as the message is consistent during the crisis, right? And leadership literature informs us that there is a very strong link between your CEO image and the company image. So if we were to infer this finding in the realm of social media, you've got good CEO image on social media, then that's good for your company. Bad image, then it's bad for your company. And if you hardly have an image, you don't have an image, which is the problem for Asian CEOs especially, right? Then your crisis communications may be impacted negatively as well. From crisis comm and social media literature, we are seeing more and more studies which tell us that there might be a need to engage, to have that dialogue with your stakeholders online than in the traditional media space. So all these tells us that it's very important to prepare your source, your spokesperson, for an online setting. And you need social media training. And what we love is a framework by Prof. Coombs because it tells us what you need to do for media training on traditional media, okay? I don't need you to read each and every line there. Just look at the column headers, okay? You've got tasks, you've got knowledge, skills, and traits. And how I interpret this, if I were a media trainer, is that I will look at this and think about what are the gaps that my team has, including the spokesperson, the CEO, what gaps he might have in his knowledge, skills, and traits in order to deliver a particular task in a very effective manner. All right? So from the gaps, I create training specifically for that person or for that team. All right? So this was really our inspiration. And from here, we distilled 5 different research questions. I won't go through them in detail. Stacey will share with you our findings for them, and she'll go through them with detail. And from there, from all these findings, we shall deliver to you the 2 things that we promised. So Stacey.
So what we did to get our findings was to speak to 15 practitioners. They were a mix of those who were in-house and those who were from public relations agencies. They were from government organizations as well as private corporations. If you look at our second table, most of them had more than 10 years of experience, and most predominantly, they were either a part of or had direct access to the dominant coalition, so they were very influential people. So on to our findings. Research question 1, what strategies can organizations and its spokespersons adopt when communicating through social media crisis? This was the pre-crisis phase. So in terms of social media monitoring, we know that you need to track what people are saying about your company in good times and in bad. For social media literacy, do you know how to use the platforms that are available to you, and what are the best platforms for your organization? And for establishing online presence, we need to be able to cultivate relationships in good times and to start dialogues, as Ivan had mentioned earlier. For RQ2, who should represent an organization as its primary social media spokesperson during times of crisis? Now, our interviewees said there were two main voices. One is the organizational voice, and the other one is the individual voice. If you look at a company like DHL, for example, they set up an account. They probably have a communications team behind them who sends out the messages on behalf of DHL. That is your organizational voice. So it's many people with one DHL voice. In terms of the individual voice, this could be your influencer on your company, your CEO, could be your expert. For example, the Prime Minister of Singapore, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong, he has his own individual account and he always talks about his own government activities and business, so it's a professional account. But is he the one tweeting? Is he the one in the middle of a crisis going, I'm here right now, blah, blah, blah? No, he's probably not. He has a team behind him who helps him deliver the messages. So for RQ3, when communicating crisis on social media, what characteristics, like the knowledge, skills, and traits, should a spokesperson have? So if you remember Tim Coombs' framework, we managed to identify the different factors that contribute to the framework, the knowledge, the skills, and the traits. I'll go through a little bit of the highlights of each. For knowledge, we talked about speed of discussion. We know that it needs to be fast on Facebook, on Twitter. You must not remove negative posts because then you're just like whitewashing over what needs to be actually shown. You're like ignoring the concerns of the people. You must know your platform capabilities. Twitter, 140 characters, Facebook, pictures, videos, longer posts. And you must know the difference between a crisis and a paracrisis. When is something really serious, when something is not. For skills, you need to be able to assess the sentiment that is being said. Is it positive, negative, neutral? Do you need to address it at all? You must be able to correct wrong information, address the concerns of the stakeholders, and regardless of the platform, must always have a consistent message. Can you have a consistent message on a 140 character post as well as a 400 character post? In terms of traits, the individual must be analytical, must not be somebody who's argumentative. You must be sincere, as we've heard earlier as well, and of course high stress tolerance in time of crisis. For RQ4, what are the factors that would influence the choice of platform used for crisis communications? There are two factors. One is to know your platform capabilities and limitations. All of that is out there, and of course we all know the prominence of hashtagging and being able to track what is being said. And of course the organizational and individual presence on social media. Yes, your organization is online, but your CEO needs to speak up. Does he have an account already? Is he influential enough to say something with his own account? And with all that in mind, we combined all our results and came up with the spokesperson social media task analysis framework, which mimics Tim Coombs' framework using the task statements. We identified 4 main ones, as well as the knowledge, skills, and traits required to execute each one of them. I'm not going to go into details, but Ratna mentioned before, this is just another framework that organizations can use in order to fill in the gaps where a team is not able to get a good spokesperson out there. To complement this framework, we've also come up with a social media task timeline, which Ratna will take you through.
Thanks. All right, when we are doing media training, your traditional media training, very often we have crisis simulations. So when we are doing social media training, you might want to do a social media crisis simulation, and you look at the communication activities on social media as well. And from the literature, and I was very happy from the presentations that were given earlier, as well as our findings from our interviews, we found that there is a kind of timeline that you might want to use. Okay, so this is our proposal. Okay, within the first hour, it is recommended by our interviewees that you need to get a message out. And what do you assess as the team, right? You need to think about, does your organization already have social media presence? If it has, does your CEO have a social media presence? And then those are the tasks that you can do for your organization, all right? And we know for sure that the best person also is your CEO. But if he doesn't have a social media presence, then you might want to think about latching onto your organizational account, but signing off as your CEO, all right? And as time goes on, the tasks may vary a little bit. We heard from an earlier presentation that we need to, before we can have a good dialogue, we need to understand our audience. And this definitely has to happen before the crisis hits, right? But during the crisis also, it's very important to listen to your audience. It's like you're having a fight with your spouse, and you're fighting, but you're not really listening. That cannot happen in a crisis. You have to listen. And that's the task that you need to do. You have to intensify this up to 24 hours, okay, to find out what are the trends, what are the criticisms that people have of your organization. And because we need a dialogue, right, at some point, we believe, based on our findings from our interviewees, we believe that it's somewhere between the 24-hour to 36-hour mark. You need to have a form of engagement. You can set up a Q&A. For instance, Facebook allows you to have, chat functions, right? You can make use of that to have that dialogue and to reduce, to clarify what is rumor, what is fact, to share what is the latest update regarding your crisis. And from here, I believe that it supports the first presentation, that you are stealing back thunder, okay? You're making sure that you're on top of the situation and that organizations will listen to you first rather than news media or rumors. So we hope that these two frameworks together will help you in social media training for your organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. It was really interesting. I was just wondering, as I was sitting here, and actually throughout the conference as we were speaking about crisis communication, a lot of what we know about reputation is that it's anticipating. And it seems to me as though there's a lot of emphasis still on the responding. What's your view on that? How do you, I do realize that there's a need to be responsive to the crisis situation, but how do you see the role of anticipating risk?
Well, based on the literature that we know of, crisis management plans are anticipating, right? And it's very important to be prepared and be ready for the crisis prior to the crisis. And this is something that we advocate as well through our presentation. So yes, we were very much focusing during, on the crisis stage, but this comes as a bigger picture. So we feel that the value of these tools is that it can be part of your overall crisis management plan so that you can be ready and anticipate that crisis better. Yeah.
One last question. Seize the opportunity. One last question. Okay, well, as the closer of this section, I'd like to thank all of our presenters. Wow, what a dynamic group. Don't you agree? So together, we navigated through a quick journey within 1 hour and 50 minutes. We learned about the effects of source and channels. We learn about ethical engagement. We learn about the importance of having meaningful, authentic dialogue on social media, and also providing training so we can engage our publics, not just effectively, but also ethically. Okay, so let's continue this discussion at lunchtime. So thank you all very much. Okay.